Hey guys, so a lot of you have been using my guide on Discord and how to these making a new weapon. A lot of people are using it, which is great. But a lot of people are still confused because it's a lot of writing and a lot of reading. So just to make your guys' lives easier, I'm going to be doing a video on it today, showing off 3 weapons um, that you can make. One being a sword, one being an axe, and one being a blunt weapon. So um, I'm gonna go from scratch, do everything as slowly and as perfectly as I can to make sure that you guys get all the information in your head. But because it's gonna be one video, it's gonna be quite long. So I'll try and not drag on. So anyway, if you go into the guide, you'll see you'll need Unity 1.8. Now, all you have to do for that, download the Unity Hub. Let me get it out. So, once you have the Unity Hub open, you see I have loads, but ignore these. You add one, and it has to be 2019.1.8 F1. That's the version you have to get. So, I've already opened this up, so this doesn't matter. So, once you've done that, you then move the SDK files, which is found in the how-to by Max. Then once that's installed, you find a model. So I'm on Sketchfab. It's probably like the best place to get the models, free ones at least. So the way to do this is I'll show you how to install the weapons, but I'll be using my own models I already have downloaded. Because kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So I will get, let's see, something simple for a sword or an axe. Yeah, I'll get this axe. So this is the fire axe. Simple. So you gotta have one that's downloadable. So I'll download this now. These file formats do matter. Unity supports some of them, but ones like GLTF are not supported by Unity. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to put it into Blender, then convert it into either an FBX or an OBJ. Then you can run it in Unity pretty easily. So I've got this downloaded. So it's right here in my zip. So what I'll do is I'll create a folder. You open the zip app. You put the items in there. And now you should have, some have the model in here. Some of them have zips including the model. You just extract it. Get the model, there it is. So now I'll go into Unity. So I'll create a folder I already have called weapons, and then in the weapons folder I'll create another folder called fire axe. I'll open it up. Then simple as, you get the text, the model, you move it into there, and it should be right there. Then you go back into the folder to textures, and you drag all of these textures on there. I drag them all usually, even though I only use 2. So once that's done, then you drag the model in, and then drop down should have the 2 models. And because that bit there, the G default, isn't really showing on the weapon, you can delete it. Oh, you have to unpack the prefab first, and then you can delete it. So I have the fire action now. It's got no texture at the moment. So what you do is you drag the normal texture into there, and with the normal file, you drag into the normal file, and then you click fix now. So there you go. There's your textured weapon, and then you go on to making a weapon. So let me just delete that. So that's how to put in a model for Unity. so I won't be making that. There it is. So I'll start off with my weapons. Now, I have a lot of models here, but I need to redo some of mine. One of mine being the Dragon Mace. So I'll start off with the blunt weapons. So the blunt weapons are much easier. I won't start with the Dragon Mace because it's really complicated. I'll start with, let's see. I'll start off with my metal hammer. So my metal hammer has these here. So I'll just drag it in. Simple as can be. Some files have a camera and a light attached to it. So if you just unpack the prefab, you can delete the camera and the lights. The lamp, it doesn't really matter. So now you have the hammer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag. You see I have 2 of these here. The way you do that is you duplicate these and rename them, meaning you can set different values for each shader. So for the handle, I want default. So as you can see by there, I've already set this up before, so generate new material. So the handle is there, I put in the default map. So now it adds more detail. I have the hammer. Now the hammer has 3, because in the 3, I can make it so it has reflections and it's really shiny. It's also really dark. So you can change how light and dark it is by the color picker next to the albedo. So once that's done, and then for here, I want it to be 2, because it is quite shiny on the model. Also on 2 here, and 2 here. So that's that. So you have the model in now with the textures. So the first thing you do is you right click and create an empty. So you want to name this the name of your weapon. So this is going to be ball. This is going to be drags small hammer. This is an example. So now you rename the name of the model, which is this one here. You rename by clicking F2. And I'm going to name this mesh. Then I'm going to create an empty on the mesh and name that models. Now I drag each one of these down to the models. And that's done. Now as you've noticed, I don't know how big or small this weapon is. I can't tell the difference of this between that and a massive weapon or small weapon. So the way to find out how big a weapon is by going into the prefabs folder, which is brought by the SDK, getting out the dagger, removing the tag. As you can see, this is a one-handed hammer, but it's huge compared to the dagger. So let me just rotate this so it's easier to see. So as you can see, the size comparison is pretty large. So firstly, put the mesh, drag it under the drag small hammer, and now you can edit these models. So I want to make it so it's slightly taller than the dagger, but not too tall. You simply click on that because you don't want to edit this. You want to edit the models themselves. So I want to change maybe 0.2. And there we go. So now the size of that is in comparison pretty well. I'm going to increase it by 1 more. I will be releasing this model, by the way, eventually. So now, in all dimensions, it's roughly a good size. So I can get rid of the dagger now. So next, click on the main model, the parent, you add component, and you type in item definition, and it should come up with all these. You should see a box. This box is the preview. You can drag this to show what it looks like in the book. So That's what mine will look like in the book, for example. So now, I want to edit the ID. So the ID, I'm going to name it is Drax Hammer. So it should have generated your holder points and parry points already. Now, I'd switch to local for this. It's better if the holder point is in the middle of the weapon. Same with the parry point. So with the holder point, I also recommend you rotate it. So you click on the rotate tool and you make sure that the blue arrow is pointing downwards. So now it's pointing downwards. I want to make it exact, so 270, and it should be in the middle of the weapon. You always have to make sure that the hammer is at position 000 at all times. This is to make it easier for you to make sure that all components are in the right spot. So hold the point in the middle, upside down, same with the parry point. So the holder point is what the weapon will look like on your back or on a shack. It can be really buggy if it's done wrong. For instance, if it's a heavy weapon and you grab it with a bad holder point, you'll go flying off the map. It can be really buggy if done wrong. The parry point is if you give these custom weapons to enemies, how they will parry your attacks. So now, as you can see, we have this to do. So we have a whoosh. The whoosh I recommend you always put on the end of the weapon. It's the point where it makes the sound when you swing it. Naming these are pretty important as well. I'd recommend you keep that to whoosh. I'll get to what I mean by naming the components in a bit. So now I want the preview to go upwards a bit. So it covers the whole weapon. So now you're here. So now you want to do colliders. So under the mesh category, you create an empty and you create an empty colliders. Now you can name these whatever you like. It's just better for organization. So now I want to create another collider for the handle. So I'll name it handle. And I want to add component capsule collider. Should look like this. Now you can edit the collider. To fit the weapon perfectly. Or not so perfectly. It doesn't, as long as it's not fully out of the way, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. And then, so that's the handle done. Now I want one for the spike. So for the spike, I will have it the emptiest box. So I'm gonna name it to the box collider. I'm gonna edit the size so it fits perfectly. If you want it to fit perfectly without being in this 3D view, you can click on this here, so you can edit the size of it in a better way. Okay. Alright, so now the spike is on perfect levels of the weapon. It's time to do the hammer. So I've done the handle. Now for the top bit. I'm doing it quite lazily, but you can make it way more complicated if you like. It's up to you. So I'll create a head collider, and I want it to be a box too. And I am being a bit lazy by doing this, but you can do it another way if you like. Is to grab the points. I'm just going to do the entire top as a blunt collider to make lives easier. So I want to make sure it fits the weapon pretty well. Alright, so that's done. And I now have the colliders for the whole weapon. It's pretty lazily done. All of my models are usually way more complicated than this, but I'm just simplifying it. So once that's done, you go into the collider. So for the handle, you want to set the material. If you click on the little circle there, I want to set the collider for the handle to be wood hard. The only reason it's wood hard is wood hard makes it so you can't stab it and the dagger will get stuck. Wood will do that. Wood hard won't. So the spike, I want it to be dagger, blade dagger, and for the head, I want it to be, let's say, blade hammer. So now that that's done, we go back onto the small hammer. So now we have collider groups to do. So in the collider groups, I have 3 parts of the weapon that are going to deal completely different damage. So, because there's 3, not exactly 3 colliders, but there's going to be a blunt for the handle, a different blunt for the head, and a pierce for the spike. So there's going to be 3. So now you name them accordingly. So I'm going to have handle, pommel, and head. So now you generate colliders. Because I've been a bit lazy, there's only 1 collider for each. But in a complicated weapon, you can have hundreds and hundreds of colliders. So now I want to drag them onto the specific collider group. So the handle goes here, the spike goes onto the pommel, and the head goes onto the head. So with the head, I want it to imbue magic along with the pommel because it's a spike. But I don't want the handle to imbue magic because that doesn't make any sense. So that's done. Now goes on to the handle. So you create another empty and you name it handle. Now the name of that is very important as you specify it in the JSON. So you can have multiple handles, but I recommend you name them to like handle 1, handle 2, handle 3, because the more complicated your names are, the more complicated that your weapon is, your JSON is. So for the handle here, you want to add a handle definition. So now you have a handle definition right here. Because this is pointing upwards, it should point upwards for you. But if the weapon is sidewards, you just rotate it. So right now, the handle has 1 direction you can hold it. So right now it's holding it wrong, as you can see, because the sideways is going towards this end. You don't want that. So I want to rotate this 90 degrees. 190 degrees. So now it should be holding that way. So wherever you want to hold the weapon is the first point right here. That's the main point. Wherever it's pointing is where your hand is pointing when you grab the weapon. But right now you can only hold it in one way. So here you want to have allowed orientations. Change that to 4. Now element 0 you don't touch that. It's element 1 you want, the 2 and 3 you want to change. So for element 1 you can put as 180 for the Z coordinates, 180 for the Y on element 2, and for both Y and Z on element 3. So now you can hold this upside down, backwards, whatever. This will change in due course with updates to the SDK. So now for the reach is kind of calculated on its own, but I like to add it in just in case. It's going to be 0.2. So you don't have to mess with this now. This is as it is. So now you go onto the small hammer again. Oh, sorry, I forgot one thing. So now you need to add the axis length. So the axis length defines how far you can hold the weapon. So I want it to go pretty far, down here and up there. There you go. That should work fine. So now you can also see the purple arrow where you can hold the weapon. So now you want to go into the small hammer and you want to drag the handle to the main handle right, and it should add in for the left too. Next thing is the fly reference. Not exactly necessary, but it's great to have. Again, you'll need the blue arrow. So you see the blue arrow here. It's going to be 90 degrees, just to specify. Now I want to put it on where I'm facing forward. And I want to rotate it, let's say, a little bit to make it so it's slanted when it's thrown. This is normally with telekinesis also. So the next thing to do now is the damages. You also want to drag the right ref over there. So next is the damages. It's the most important part of the weapon. So I want to create an empty, and I'm going to create two. Blunt 1, blunt 2, and pierce. So I've named these pretty lazily, but blunt 1 is going to be the head, blunt 2 is going to be the handle. So in blunt 1, I'm going to add a damager definition. Now, firstly, you want to have the collider group name. These are the collider groups that you named in here. So I want blunt 1 to be the head. So I'll do the head collider group. Now, for blunt, penetration length and depth is going to be 0, and it doesn't matter where you put this. It's the same with blunt 2. So I'm going to add a damager definition. This is going to be the handle. And again, it's going to be 0, 0. Now for the pierce, it's different. So I'm going to drag this out a bit just to show you. So just for reference, I'm going to make it 1, 1. So right now it's pointing in the wrong direction. So I want to change the rotation. So for piercing, you always want this line to be on the top or the tip of the blade, or the point where you're stabbing with, so that the stab part is going through the weapon. So now you want to alter it as you will. So for pierce, you do not need a penetration length. You just need the depth. So the depth you want to fit to the weapon, so there. So I've done it 0.1, so it fits just the stabby part. And I want to change the collider group name to pommel. Now for piercing, you want to always have the direction set to forward, as that makes it so the sides here, so if you hit them with the side, it doesn't stab them and they get stuck. Okay, so damage definitions are now done. The weapon is now ready to be put in game. So it's ready. So now I'm going to create a new folder in my assets folder called drags small hammer. So I've got the folder. I don't think I've forgotten anything. I now drag the hammer into the assets, into the folder that you created in the assets folder. Now you should see this little box here. Let me bring it up. So this is box here. This is important. This is the bundle box. So you want to specify this to a specific asset bundle. So you click on the prefab, you click on the none box, and you click new. Now it shouldn't let you type for the first part. I don't know why. I think it's a bug. To fix that, you click off it, click on the prefab again, click new, and it should let you type. So the name of the bundle is very important. So you want the name of the bundle to be, let's see, drags small hammer. There. So now it's on the drag small hammer assets group. That's done now. So now it's in an assets group. You click on blade and sorcery and you build asset bundles. So this will take a while. So while this continues, I'm going to go into Steam, open the properties into the local files of blade and sorcery. So while that loads, I'm going to go into Blade and Sorcery _ data, streaming assets. I want to create a new folder. I'll call it Drags Small Hammer. So where is it? So it's right here. Right now the folder is empty. You want to go into my guide and download a manifest folder. Now the manifest file tells the game, look, this weapon exists. So I'm going to go into one of my mods just to grab my manifest, but in my guide, my written guide, there's a download link for one. So I'm going to grab one of those and I'm going to put it in a manifest folder. I recommend you get Notepad++ for editing documents, makes life so much easier. And change the manifest to small hammer. I'm going to change the description to whack. And it's going to be I'm the author, the mod version is going to be 1, the game version is going to be 6. That's done. Now it tells the game that the mod exists. So now you want to go into streaming assets, default, items. So the items here, it's the best to grab an item that is similar to your weapon. So for instance, for my small hammer, it will be the mace. So I will copy the mace, I'll go back to the old folder, I'll paste it in, and I'll rename it to Drags Small Hammer. That's done. Perfect. So now you want to go into it and you want to edit it. So you want to change the ID first thing. That's important. So the ID is Drags Small Hammer. The name of it is going to be Drags' Hammer. And the description where it shows in the book, I'm just going to change that to That's Pretty Whack. And the author is going to be me. So that's done now. Now, the category, it's a blunt weapon. So it'll be in a blunt. But if you wanted to change it to like firearms, if it was a gun, or something like that, then it's as simple as going into my guide and it'll tell you quite at the bottom what storage categories to go. So next I go into the prefab name. This is the part where most people get confused on. I want to do the @ symbol and I want to do the name of the bundle. So as seen here, my asset bundle name is Drags Small Hammer. So I want to do @Drags Small Hammer, and then you do a colon, and it should be the name of your prefab. So, for instance, the name of my prefab here is Drags Small Hammer .prefab. An easiest way, just to not make mistakes, is you can copy the path of the folder you put the weapon in. So if I do that, it'll come up with assets. Now you just delete. So it just has the prefab name. Now you can edit the mass. The mass here is going to be 0.0 for me. So that simple stuff is done. Now that this is done, for now, I can go back into my small hammer. I can go into asset bundles. So I'll set my small hammer here. I want to open it in Explorer. Now it should open your assets bundle folder with all your bundles. So I want to copy the small hammer and I want to plop it in here. Right? You do not touch this. So now that that's done, you can go back into the JSON and you should go to the damages, the interactables, and the whooshes. So here, as you can see, I have the damages here. So it's blunt 1, blunt 2, and pierce. It's different for the mace. It's pierce, which is going to stay the same, blunt, which is also going to stay the same, and handle blunt. What I mean by staying the same is the damager ID. So this is not changing, but this here, transform name for blunt on my weapon does not exist. So I want to specify that it is blunt 1. And for the transfer name for the handle, it's going to be blunt 2. And there you have it. The weapon is ready. So if you want to do custom damages, it's pretty simple. You just go back into the streaming assets folder, go into default, get a damager, copy one of these, drag it over to the folder and change the ID. Then you specify in the JSON the damager ID is the same idea as what you changed that damager to. So now that is done, let's load into Blade and Sorcery and I'll show you how it's done. So my mic be maybe a little quieter as I go off into the headset, mostly because the Oculus mic is not very good. So I might sound a bit quiet, but I'll try my best to get myself heard. So what about starting? So now I'm playing all good. So now I go into the storage, and you should see my preview shows the damages. If the damager is wrong, the damager will show as something like hashtag exclamation mark. Take it. There it is. Now it's very large, unnecessarily large. So, but it should work fine. I will edit this in a second, just to show how to do it. I'm going to choose a map, just to show that it works. Enemies. Very small, very large, but it's shiny. So to change that, I'm now going to close the game. I'm going to go into the Unity. Now screw changing everything again. So now you can edit this to your bleed. So I'm going to change, for example, to 0.7. 0.7. That should be perfect. But I'm going to change this to... Yeah, that should be fine. So it's simple as I changed it, make sure everything is right. So that's fine. That looks fine. Is this handle okay? Yep, the handle looks good. So now that's done. You go back into your folder. So drag small hammer. You delete the old one. You also want to make sure you unpack it pretty bad. Drag it back down. You change up bundle. The asset bundle already exists now. So for the small hammer, and then you build assets. Now wait for the assets to be built. In the meantime, I'm going to be making a custom damager. So for the custom damager, I'm going to go into the streaming asset folder, and I'm going to go into default. I'm going to grab damages, and I'm going to grab the mace blunt. Once I grab that, I go back into streaming assets folder for my weapon. I'm going to rename this to small hammer blunt.json. Now that's changed. I added that with Notepad. I changed the ID to small hammer blunt. And I want to change damage to 9 and 14. And then I want to make it so every time I hit them, they're going to fall over. So I'll change that to true, and I'll change this here to false. Now I want to make it so they fly when I hit them. So I'm going to change the force. It's going to decrease to about 30, but in its way, I'm going to add force multiplier. It's going to be 4. This is going to be 3, and this is going to be 2. I might increase it to 2. So now that's done, I go back to the ID. I copy it, and I put it in the mace blunt area. That is damager ID to this. That's done. So I save that now. My asset bundle is done. We're going to small hammer, and I simply copy and paste it. It replaces it. Now I open back up Latest Sorcery. I'm just going to go straight into the arena just to show my damager. Damager should be the same. That's considerably smaller and a good set. So, how much damager works? So set this for really hard whack when you hit them. Going back into the JSON, go to damager, and simply increasing things. So I'm going to change it back to 1. I'm going to change it to 180. Massive increase. So now that's done, I can simply save it, go back into here, go into the debug option, and reload the JSON. Give it some time. Now I can save my So you go into Unity. So I can get rid of this now. I go into Unity. So for instance, right now I've got all my Unity classes. So for the sword, I just need to define the damages. So just as an example, I'll get out my hatchet for the axe. So I'll get out my hatchet. So there's my hatchet, right? So I've done specific gliders for this using the program. So now I have these are exactly the same. But for the axe, you can see there's both length and depth. So for that, I use slash. So the slash is going into here, and this length has to be the size of the blade. Always has to be the size of the axe blade. And pierce, this pierce here is going through the sharp bit as I can. So the slash, the depth also shows how far the enemy is going on my weapon. So if you go into my hatchet mod, so I'll go into my, let's see, where is my hatchet? So there's a hatchet. So as you can see here, I've specified how far it goes in the enemy. Right? And that's how that is done. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. You can make 2 power points. So I've made 2 power points. One over here, and one over here. You don't have to specify these anywhere. This is done anyway. Now as you can see, I've made 2 handles. One for that bit there, and one for that bit there. You just add another handle definition in the interactable. So you simply grab this, make sure you put a comma next to the first one, then paste it and change that to handle 2. That's done. You can also change it to light and heavy, that's up to you. Now, for the sword, I'm going to go into using my one-handed sword. So this is my Dragon Slayer. You're very familiar with this, I take it. So for this, I have a slash and a blunt, slash and a pierce. So for the pierce, it's exactly the same as it was on the mace, or the hammer, sorry. The pierce has no length, has been set forward, and has a depth going down the blade. But for slash on this weapon is a bit different. So this here may look like a depth, but it's not. This is the length. So you want to rotate the length so it fits the blade, and you want to change the depth to something very, very small. You cannot change it to 0 to show up. This should be set all, or you can do forward and backwards, but it's, if you hit it with a slight edge, it won't slash, which is a bit annoying, so I always set it all. And of course, nothing much to change here. All is pretty much the same. So yeah, that's done. So you do exactly the same for the JSONs. You edit text, edit the damages so they fit well. Now for the damages, you have to be sure that PS is always on top, then it's slash, then it's blunt. The reason for this is because the damages go in a specific order. So if you choose to have slash first, it won't stab. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Now it should work in game as it should. If you guys need any more assistance with this sort of stuff, let me know. Don't DM me, but at me on Discord, maybe modding help or the modding discussion. It's up to you. I hope this guide helps, and I'll see you guys around. Later.